The last bite. The cold wind blew through the broken walls of the ruined shelter. Dust and ash covered everything. The sky above was gray. There were no trees, no birds, no sound, only silence and hunger. She was shaking. Her body was thin. Her eyes, once full of life, were now tired and empty. The alien mother sat on the dirt floor holding her baby in her arms. The child cried softly, too weak to scream. His belly was empty. His lips were dry. She looked down at the small, dirty piece of root in her hand. It was the last thing she had, just one bite. Her stomach twisted with pain. She hadn't eaten in days. But her baby, he was smaller than he should be. His bones were easy to see under his soft skin. He needed this, more than she did. She broke the root into 2 tiny pieces. She kept one. The other she pressed into her baby's mouth. The child sucked on it, chewing slowly. His crying stopped. Her heart felt heavy but warm. She smiled. A weak, broken smile. Then, she put the other piece to her lips. But before she could eat it, a sound came. Crunch. A footstep on dead leaves. Her eyes went wide. Fear rushed through her. She quickly wrapped the baby in a thin blanket and hid him under her body. She grabbed a rock with her free hand and stayed still. Her heart beat fast. More footsteps. Was it a slaver? A hunter? Someone here to steal? Or, worse, she peeked through a crack in the wall. Her hands were shaking. She was ready to fight, or die. A man walked into view. He wasn't like the raiders who wore armor and carried whips. This one looked different. His clothes were simple: brown boots, a thick jacket, and a long scarf around his neck. He looked human. He had no weapon in his hands. Instead, he held something strange, a metal box. He knelt near a flat rock, opened the box, and took out something hot. Steam rose into the air. She could smell it from where she was. Food. Real food. She blinked. Her stomach growled loudly. The man didn't say a word. He just placed the food gently on the rock, stood up, and stepped back. Then he looked around as if he knew someone was watching. But he didn't shout. He didn't move closer. He just sat down a few meters away, facing the trees. Silent. She didn't understand. Was it a trap? Her eyes moved to the food. There was bread, some kind of soup. Warmth. She didn't move. The baby made a soft sound. He was trying to reach for the smell. The man turned his head and smiled gently. Then he looked away. Again, she waited. Minutes passed. The man still didn't move. Slowly, carefully, she crept forward. Her legs were weak. Her arms shook. But she crawled across the dirt, always watching the man. He stayed still. She reached the rock. The food was real. Hot. Fresh. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. Her child whimpered. Still. The man didn't stop her. She backed away slowly, with the food keeping her eyes on him. Then she turned and ran. Back in the ruined shelter, she sat with her child and fed him carefully. His tiny hands reached for the soup. He drank greedily, small drops running down his chin. She didn't eat yet. She just watched him, her eyes full of silent tears. Then she took the bread and bit into it. It was soft, warm. She gasped. It tasted like life. Her tears flowed freely now. She didn't know why the human helped. She didn't know who he was. But in this world of hunger, pain, and fear, a stranger had brought food, without asking for anything. And for the first time in weeks, her baby had stopped crying. That night, she did not sleep. She sat close to the wall, holding her baby, staring into the dark. Outside, the fire the man had made was still burning far away. She could see it through the cracks in the shelter, a small warm light in a cold, cruel world. Morning light touched the edge of the ruined shelter. The alien mother opened her eyes slowly. Her body still ached, but her baby was warm in her arms. He slept peacefully, his little mouth still holding the smell of the food from last night. She had eaten only a little, saving most for him. But that little bit had given her strength to think, to worry, to wonder. That human, who was he? She crawled toward the wall and peeked through the crack again. The man was still there. He had not left. His fire was still burning, and he was stirring something in a pot. Was he waiting for her? No raider would do that. No slaver would sit so calm, it didn't make sense. He looked up suddenly as if he felt her watching. Their eyes met for a second. She froze. But he didn't get up. He just gave a small nod and smiled. Her heart beat faster. She pulled back from the crack, confused. What kind of human smiles at a starving alien woman? She didn't trust him, but she couldn't stop thinking about the food. Her child needed more. Hours passed. Her baby cried again. She tried to comfort him, but her arms were weak. Her body was still empty inside. She looked at the broken door. Should she go out? She didn't know his name. She didn't know his language. But she remembered one thing. He didn't try to hurt her. That was already rare in this broken world. She tied a thin blanket around her child and stepped outside. The sun was cold. The air was dry. She took slow steps toward the man's camp. He noticed her but didn't stand up. He moved aside and pointed at the fire. Then he picked up a second bowl and poured soup into it. Gently, he placed it on a flat rock between them. Then he stepped back again. She walked slowly. The child in her arms whimpered, but when the warm smell touched his nose, he grew calm. She reached the bowl. The human didn't move. She knelt and fed, her baby first letting him drink slowly. Then she sipped a little for herself. Her body was so tired, but the warmth filled her belly. It gave her hope. Still, she didn't speak. What would she say? Would he even understand? But he didn't seem to expect anything. He simply sat down, poking the fire, humming something low and calm. After some time, he opened a small pouch and took out a piece of dry cloth. He held it up and made a wiping motion near his face, then gently tossed it toward her feet. She looked at it, confused. The cloth was clean. Was he telling her to clean herself? Was he trying to insult her? She almost stood to leave. But then she saw something else. His own face, his cheek, had the same dust and ash as hers. And now he was wiping it off his face, using another cloth, though. He wasn't mocking her. He was trying to share, trying to help. She picked up the cloth and wiped the dirt from her face and her baby's cheeks. The child giggled when the soft cloth tickled his nose. She looked at the man again. He smiled wider, this time. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a shiny object, a small toy. It was a tiny wooden animal that moved when shaken. He placed it near the child. The mother stared. Was this a trick? She didn't trust gifts, not anymore. But the child reached out with curious fingers and touched the toy. It made a little click and he laughed. The mother's breath caught in her throat. That laugh. She hadn't heard it in so long. The man said something softly. She didn't understand, but the tone was gentle. Kind. Then he pointed at himself. Darren, he said slowly. She frowned. He pointed again. Darren. She understood. That was his name. She looked down, unsure. Then she touched her chest and whispered, Talia. He nodded, repeating it. Talia. Something shifted inside her. She had a name again, a voice again. For the first time in weeks, she felt something new. Not safety, not comfort, but a small beginning. She didn't know where this would go. She didn't know why this human was helping her. But for now, her baby had food. She had warmth. And the man had given her something even rarer than food. He gave her respect. As the sun began to set again, Talia stayed beside the fire. Darren handed her a small blanket for the night. She sat across from him, her baby in her lap, the little toy close by. She didn't speak much, but she didn't run. And that was something. Night fell again, and the cold returned quickly. The stars above were sharp and clear. The wind howled through the dead trees, biting at Talia's skin as she sat beside the dying fire. She pulled her baby closer, wrapping him tighter in the blanket Darren had given her. He was still asleep, warm and full, but Talia's body shivered. Her feet were numb, her fingers stiff. Across from her, Darren noticed. He stood up without a word and walked to a nearby storage box. He pulled out something long, a worn but thick jacket, and brought it to her. She stared at it. He held it out. She didn't move. She remembered the last time someone offered her something. It had come with chains. But Darren didn't step closer. He just placed the jacket on a rock beside her and went back to the fire. He sat, poked the flames, and hummed quietly again. Talia waited. After some time, she picked up the jacket. It smelled like dust and wood smoke. It also smelled like safety. She wrapped it around her thin frame and closed her eyes. For the first time in a long time, her body stopped shaking. But the wind was growing stronger. The fire cracked and spit. A cold gust lifted the edge of the baby's blanket. The child whimpered in his sleep. Darren stood again and looked at the sky. Clouds were moving in, dark, fast, heavy. A storm. Talia had seen them before. Rain on this planet didn't fall soft. It attacked like knives. She rose quickly, holding her baby tightly. Her old shelter, half a wall and a pile of rubble, would not survive another storm. She looked at Darren with wide, worried eyes. He looked back calmly, then pointed behind his tent. There was a second shelter, a spare. It was made of old metal shaped like half a dome, simple, small, but strong. He stepped toward it, opened the door, and turned on a small light inside. Then he stepped away again. He didn't lead her in. He didn't push. He just waited. She stood frozen for a moment. Then the first drops of rain fell, sharp, cold, fast. Her baby cried. Talia ran. She slipped inside the small dome just before the rain turned into a storm. Inside, the shelter was dry and warm. There was a soft pad on the floor, a blanket, even a small heater in the corner humming quietly. She placed her child down gently and checked his body. He was cold but not wet. His eyes blinked slowly before closing again. She sat back and stared around. This place, it was small, but safe. Her chest ached. Why was this man helping them? What did he want? Nothing made sense. In her world, nothing came free. Yet here she was, safe, fed, dry. Tears burned her eyes, but she wiped them away. Outside, Darren stayed by the fire under a plastic sheet. He cooked something in a small pot and waited. Later, he knocked softly on the dome's side and left a tray near the door. Talia peeked out. Steam rose from the food again. Fresh soup, a bit of rice, and something sweet-smelling. She looked out into the rain. Darren had already walked away, back to his corner. She pulled the tray inside and closed the door. She fed her child again and ate in silence. Every bite warmed her soul. The storm lasted all night. Rain hit the dome like tiny hammers, but it held strong. Talia didn't sleep much. Her body still didn't trust this peace, but her baby slept through the night without crying. That was enough for her. By morning, the rain had stopped. The air smelled clean. The ground was wet and shiny. Small pools of water reflected the gray sky. Talia stepped out with her child in her arms. Darren was already awake, packing some tools. He nodded at her. She nodded back. Still no words. Still no questions. Only small actions. Tiny signs of trust. He pointed at a large tree nearby and mimed something, cutting, shaping. She watched carefully. Then, to his surprise, She placed her child in the carrier across her chest and walked over. She picked up a small axe from the ground. He looked at her, unsure. She nodded again. She would help, not because she owed him, but because she wanted to. Together they worked under the wet trees. She gathered dry branches. He sawed fallen logs. They didn't speak much. But slowly, side by side, something began to grow. Not just a fire, not just shelter, but something stronger. Talia woke up early. The little dome shelter was quiet. Her baby was still asleep, curled against her chest, his tiny fingers resting near her neck. The soft hum of the heater made the air warm. Outside, the world was wet but peaceful. No screaming, no running, no pain. She gently stood up, placed her baby on the sleeping pad, and stepped out into the morning mist. Darren was already awake. He always was. He stood near the trees, holding a small cup of hot liquid. When he saw her, he lifted it slightly, offering it. Talia walked over slowly. He poured the drink into a second cup and handed it to her. She held it close, letting the warmth touch her hands. It smelled strange but sweet. She nodded once, a silent thank you. He smiled and sat down on a flat rock. She joined him. Still no words, just silence. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was gentle. After some time, Darren reached into his coat and pulled out a small flat screen. It lit up when he touched it. He tapped on the screen, showing a simple image, a drawing of a tree. He pointed at the picture. Tree. Then he pointed at the large tree nearby. Tree. Talia tilted her head. He showed another image. This. Tiris to water. He pointed at the puddle, then food. Food. And finally he pointed at himself. Darren. She understood. He was teaching her slowly, gently. She reached out, touched the screen, and pointed at the baby, sleeping inside the dome. She whispered, Niv. Darren smiled. Niv. Then he pointed at her. She paused, then said, Talia. He repeated her name carefully. Talia. She gave a small smile. Their words were few, but they were building something. A bridge. Later that day, Darren showed her how to stack wood, how to use small stones to make a fire. She watched closely. She had done it before, but never with tools like his. When she tried, she failed the first time. The second time, she made a spark. He clapped once. Good. She looked at him surprised. He was happy, not because she served him, but because she learned. No one had ever been proud of her before. Not like this. While Niv napped, Darren cleaned the area. Talia followed and helped. She washed the dishes. He gathered old metal pieces to repair the shelter roof. Then he stopped and pointed. At his leg, his pants were torn. There was a long cut on his skin. Talia's eyes widened. She rushed inside and came back with a small bottle from her own pack. She pointed at the cut, then at the bottle. Darren hesitated, then nodded. She poured the yellow liquid over the wound. He hissed in pain but didn't move. She ripped a strip of cloth and tied it around his leg. Tight but gentle. He looked at her with soft eyes. Thank you. She didn't know the words, but she felt them. That night, as the stars appeared again, Darren made soup. He offered her the first bowl. She froze. No one ever fed her first. She stared at the bowl, then at him. He said something quiet, then placed the bowl in her hands. She took it. Her fingers trembled. She brought it to her lips and drank. The taste was simple, warm, salty, kind. Talia's eyes filled with tears. Darren looked alarmed. No good? She shook her head quickly and pressed her hand to her chest. Good. Very good. Then she wiped her face, hiding the tears. She didn't want to look weak, but Darren wasn't judging. He just smiled. After Niv ate and fell asleep again, Darren sat outside, fixing a tool. Talia joined him, holding the small wooden toy he gave Niv. It was broken. She showed it to him. He took it, studied it, and handed her a tool. Then he showed her how to repair it. Together, they fixed the tiny toy. It clicked again. She laughed softly. He laughed too. Two different worlds, two different beings, but they laughed the same. Later, Talia pointed at the stars. Stars, she said. Darren nodded. Stars, she pointed at her chest. From Lura. Darren looked curious. Lura, she nodded. My world. He typed something on his screen showing a star map. She saw it. Her home. She touched it gently, eyes wide. He found it. He knew. She looked at him with wonder. He knew her world, and still helped her. Not with big words, not with promises, but with food, with warmth, with time, with kindness, and sometimes that was the strongest language of all. Rain fell again that night, soft but steady. Inside the dome shelter, Talia sat awake while Niv slept soundly beside her. The small heater kept them warm, but her heart felt cold. She looked down at her arms, old bruises, faded scars and burns that never healed right. She hid them from Darren every day, wrapping herself in long sleeves, but she couldn't hide them from herself. The past was written on her skin. Even now, in a warm place, her mind kept whispering old pain. Morning came. The clouds cleared. Birds chirped. Small, bright creatures hopping between branches. Talia stepped outside with Niv in her arms. The grass was wet under her feet. Darren waved from the side of the camp. He was fixing something again, always working. When he saw her, he smiled. She smiled back, but it didn't reach her eyes. Later that day, while Niv napped, Talia sat near the fire. Darren brought out his small screen again and showed her a simple word, safe. Then he pointed at the shelter, at her, at the baby. Safe. She nodded, but she wasn't sure she believed it. Not yet. Darren noticed her silence. He didn't push her. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small item, an old photo. In the picture was a woman and two children, smiling, standing in front of a ship. Talia looked at it closely. Darren pointed at one child. My son, then the other. My daughter. He paused. His voice dropped. Gone. Talia's eyes widened. He had lost his family. He understood pain. She looked away, her throat tight. Slowly, carefully, she pulled her sleeve up. Scars. Long, red, cruel marks. Darren didn't flinch. He didn't stare. He simply lowered his head with quiet respect. She rolled the sleeve back down. Then, her voice low, she began to speak. In Lura, my planet, she whispered, broken words coming out slowly. Raiders came, not to kill, to take. Darren listened closely, not interrupting. They took my mate, I watched. Couldn't stop them. I ran with Niv. We hid, we starved. She paused. Her hands shook. They caught me later. Sold me. I escaped. I don't know where my mate is. Maybe dead. Darren's hands curled into fists. Not in anger at her, but at the world that had done this. She looked down. No one helped, not even my kind. I was broken thing. Darren leaned forward slowly and placed a hand on the ground between them, not touching her, but close. You are not broken, he said softly. She looked up. Tears welled in her eyes. That night, she dreamed of her home, of green skies and warm rivers, of her mate's laughter, of Niv's first steps. Then the dream turned to fire, screaming, chains, whips. She woke up crying, but when she opened her eyes, she wasn't alone. Niv was curled beside her. Darren sat nearby, silent, watching the stars. In the morning, something changed. Talia got up before Darren. She started the fire, prepared the bowls, cleaned the area. When he woke and saw her, he smiled wide. "You're early," she nodded. "My turn today." Her voice was stronger now. Later, while walking with Darren to collect wood, Talia stopped near a tree. She pointed, at a long mark on the bark. "This is where I fell. First day," she said. "Too weak to walk." Darren looked at the tree, then at her. "Not anymore." She nodded slowly. "Not anymore." That evening, Niv played in the grass with the small wooden toy. He giggled, chasing insects and falling over with joy. Talia sat near the fire, watching him. Her face was quiet, but her heart was healing. She turned to Darren. "Why?" she asked simply. He looked at her. "Why what? Why help me?" Darren thought for a moment. He tossed a twig into the fire and said, "Because someone should have helped my wife, but no one did." Talia stared at him. His eyes were sad. But there was strength there too. "Helping you helps me remember who I'm supposed to be." The fire cracked between them. Talia reached out, picked up a bowl of soup, and handed it to him first, his eyebrows raised. "For me?" She nodded. "Your turn now." He laughed softly. "Thank you, Talia." And this time she smiled, and meant it. The past had broken her, but it did not own her. Not anymore. The wind had changed. Talia felt it before she saw anything. A strange stillness had settled in the trees. No birds, no insects. Even the air felt heavy. She stood outside the shelter, watching the horizon. Niv sat beside her, drawing circles in the dirt with a stick. His little toy sat nearby, clicking with each movement. Darren was by the water, filling a container. He waved at her with a smile, but her smile didn't come. Something was wrong. That night, Darren sat at the fire, showing Niv how to stack little stones. The child laughed when the tower fell. Talia smiled, but her hands were tense. She sat beside Darren and whispered, "Something is near." He looked at her quickly. "What do you mean?" She looked toward the trees. "I feel eyes. Watching." Darren didn't laugh. He didn't question her. He simply stood, quiet and alert. Then he walked to the edge of camp and looked around carefully. Tracks. Fresh ones. Not his. Not hers. Boots. Heavy ones. By morning, the sky had darkened again, but not from rain. Darren called Talia to the fire. He crouched beside her and opened a small metal box. Inside were items she had never seen before. Weapons. She backed away, afraid. He shook his head. "No, these are for protection." He pulled out a small device and showed her how to press a button. It released a loud noise, high and sharp. Then he handed it to her. "If something happens," he said, placing it in her hand, "press. I'll come." She nodded slowly, holding the device tight. Her fingers were cold. That evening, Darren did not sit by the fire. He walked the edge of the forest with quiet steps, placing small traps along the ground. Thin wire, sharp metal teeth, hidden but deadly. Talia stayed in the dome with Niv, holding him close. Her ears were sharp. Every sound made her jump. She hated this feeling. The fear she had worked so hard to forget had returned. But this time, she wasn't alone. In the middle of the night, a snap echoed through the trees. Then another. Talia sat up fast. Footsteps, voices. She covered Niv's mouth gently as he stirred. "Shh." Outside, Darren moved like a shadow. He peeked through the trees. 3 figures, armed, talking in a language he didn't know, but he understood their tone. Hunters, scavengers, raiders. One of them limped, blood on his leg. He had stepped in a trap. They were angry now. They were close. Talia held Niv tightly, heart pounding. She heard a voice shout. Then, a crash. And then, silence. She waited. Minutes passed like hours. Suddenly, the dome's door opened. Darren stepped in. His face was sweaty. A small cut on his cheek, but he smiled. "It's done," he said softly. Talia looked up, confused. "Gone?" He nodded. "Two ran. One won't return." She stared at him. "You fought?" He nodded again. "I promised you were safe." Talia's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head slowly as if not believing what she was seeing. "You fought? For me? For you? For Niv? For peace?" Her hands trembled. She stood and placed Niv gently on the pad. Then she walked to Darren. Slowly she raised her hand and touched the cut on his cheek. Her fingers were gentle. "You bleed? For strangers?" "No," he said. "You're not strangers anymore." She dropped her hand, overcome. She had no words, only feeling. The next day the camp was quiet again. Birds returned to the trees. The wind was soft, but something inside Talia had changed. Darren showed her the traps, how to reset them, how to watch the trees, how to listen. She didn't just survive now. She learned to defend, not just her baby, herself. That night they sat, at the fire. Niv slept peacefully beside them. Talia looked at Darren and said, "Where I come from, strength is feared." He listened. "But here, strength is kindness, and that is harder." Darren nodded. "Kindness is a choice." She looked into the flames. "I want to choose it too." Darren reached into the food box and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He handed it to her. Inside was a simple silver spoon. She looked at it, confused. "It was my daughter's," he said quietly. "She loved to cook." Talia stared at the spoon, then at him. "I want you to have it." Her breath caught. She held the spoon like treasure, not for its value, but because of what it meant. She looked at Darren and whispered, "I will protect your memory, like you protect us." Outside the night was calm again, but now in the firelight, a family had begun. The next few days were peaceful. The rain stopped. The sun returned, warm and soft through the trees. Little flowers bloomed near the shelter, pushing through cracks in the dry earth. Talia no longer looked over her shoulder. She helped Darren build a stronger roof. She washed Niv's clothes near the river. She even laughed, a real laugh, when Niv tried to chase a squirrel and fell into a puddle. Darren watched them from a distance, smiling quietly. He had never seen her so alive. That evening, as the sky turned orange and gold, Darren called her over. "Talia," he said, his voice gentle but excited. "Stay here tonight, don't cook, just rest." She blinked. "Why?" He just smiled. "Because tonight is different." Then he walked away. Talia sat under the tall tree with Niv on her lap. She watched the sunset, confused but calm. After a while, she noticed something. A smell. A wonderful, rich, warm smell. Food. Real food. Not just soup or roots. Something roasted. Something made with care. She stood, holding Niv, and followed the scent. Near the fire, Darren had set a small table, made from 2 crates and a wooden slab. On top was a cloth, 3 bowls and a small lantern. On the fire, a pot simmered with thick stew. Beside it, roasted vegetables and a warm, soft-looking bread. Talia stopped. Her eyes went wide. "What is this?" she asked. Darren looked at her. "A meal. For you. For Niv. For everything you've given." She frowned. "I gave nothing. You gave us life." Darren shook his head. "You gave me back my reason to keep going." She didn't know what to say. Her lips parted, but no words came. So she sat. Darren handed her a plate. The food smelled better than anything she had ever known. She fed Niv first. The little boy giggled, licking his fingers, his face messy and happy. Then she took her first bite. Her eyes widened. Soft, warm, spiced, perfect. Her lips trembled. She took another bite. And another. Then her hands stopped. Her throat closed, and the tears came. Darren leaned forward, worried. Are you okay? Too hot? She shook her head quickly. She covered her face. The tears fell faster. She tried to hold them in, but they wouldn't stop. He didn't speak. He let her cry. When she could finally speak, her voice was broken and low. I gave my last bite to my son, she whispered, days ago. I thought that would be my last moment. Darren said nothing. His eyes shone, too. I didn't cry then, she continued. Even when I starved. Even when they beat me. Even when I ran through the night with no shoes, no food, no hope. I didn't cry. But now, she said, voice shaking. Now that I'm warm, safe, full, now I cry. Darren nodded slowly. That's what healing feels like. She looked at him. I don't understand how someone like you exists in a galaxy like this. He smiled gently. Because someone once loved me. I only pass it forward. She reached out and touched his hand. You didn't just save us. You rebuilt us. That night after the meal, they sat by the fire. Niv fell asleep in Talia's lap, holding the small wooden toy Darren had fixed. Talia looked into the flames. Will you keep us? She asked suddenly, her voice barely a whisper. Darren turned to her. We can leave if we must. I know safety doesn't last. But if you let us stay, we will never forget this. Darren didn't answer with words. He simply stood, walked into his tent, and returned with two things. A soft blanket and a silver locket. He wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. Then, with gentle fingers, placed the locket in her palm. She opened it. Inside was a photo of his children. Talia looked up, confused. I lost them, Darren said quietly. But maybe I was meant to protect others now. He closed her hand around the locket. I want you to stay. Not as guests, but as family. She couldn't speak, so she just nodded. Tears returned, but this time they were soft. Warm, like the food, like the fire, like hope. The stars watched from above. In the middle of a broken world, a mother who had nothing found everything.